Hello there, everyone, and welcome. This is your host, Pagawiggy, and today we're going to talk about the Arming Sword, a weapon that has a bit more to its history than the other weapons in the game. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. I have chosen a winner for our giveaway of the $30 Steam key, so if you entered, please check your YouTube inbox and your comment on the video by Monday evening. I will pin the winning comment on the video by 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, so check back to see if you win, and on details to claim your prize. Well, let's get right into our discussion. The arming sword holds a very unique position in Mordhau, much like the spear and the club. While all the weapons in the game were ultimately derived from weapons that existed at some earlier time in history, many of them were inevitably altered in drastic ways to better suit their niche. For example, the Halberd is really just any old polearm and has nothing unique about it aside from the shape of its head. But the head of the halberd had to be refined over the years to aid in creating a devastating all-purpose weapon. The European arming sword, on the other hand, is nearly identical to the Roman spatha that it was derived from, with the only drastic difference being a better crossguard and a higher quality steel. The spatha was a long sword that was 75 centimeters to 1 meter in length, and they were used in the 1st century AD. It's believed that the spatha was derived from either the gladius or the Celtic longsword, and eventually it led to the development of various versions of the knightly arming sword. Specimens of spatha have been found all over Europe, including northern and western Europe, where the proliferation of the spatha eventually led to the development of the Viking Age Sword. The Viking sword was heavily produced by the Frankish Empire around the 6th century AD. The Viking sword was nearly identical to the spatha, differing primarily in the manufacturing process. This in turn made mass manufacture of these swords much easier, and led to their heavy use all across Europe, particularly in Scandinavian countries. This is why, in part, they're called Viking swords, despite being made by the Franks. The arming sword, or knightly arming sword, refers to the straight, double-edged swords with a cruciform crossguard that were meant to be wielded in one hand, which were first used in Europe in the 11th century. The arming sword differed from the Viking sword that it was derived from in that it was produced with a long crossguard to protect the user, and it was produced with a much higher quality steel. The length and mass were nearly identical to that of the Viking sword and the spatha. When the weapon first came into use, it was used predominantly with a shield as a primary weapon, but as plate armor got more advanced, the longsword began to replace the arming sword as the primary implement of war in Europe. As arming swords fell out of use as the primary weapons of war, they were still extensively used as secondary weapons, and eventually led to the development of other weapons such as the rapier. In Mordhau, the arming swords are great representations of their real-life counterparts, and are some of the best weapons in the game. The cosmetic options are fantastic and show a great variety of the weapons that were used in Europe, and the Viking skin is epic, and a fantastic reference to the origin of this awesome weapon. Regardless of its beauty in Mordhau, this weapon is a serious beast. It has a shorter range than most weapons, but since it can be paired with a shield, this can sometimes be a non-issue, mitigating your fights against polearm users. It has amazing damage for such a short, fast weapon, and has one of the highest DPSs in the game. And furthermore, it is one of the cheapest weapons in the game. The arming sword is best used in extreme close quarters, while being extremely aggressive. The super fast slashes and stab of this weapon can throw many players off guard. Plus, it has great damage for such a fast weapon, killing any enemy with 2 to 5 hits, depending on which part of their body you hit them in. This weapon is a great counter for non-experienced polearm users, because the fast attack speed will let you attack through polearm users' long drags, and some windups with ease. Using a shield with this sword, and the dodge perk, can make you one of the most frustrating people to fight. The shield is a great aid when you're having trouble closing the distance, so try your best to use this weapon with any shield if you intend to make this your primary weapon. Well, let's rank this epic beast. In terms of general utility, this weapon has it all, and then some. It's one of the cheapest weapons in the game, and its stats are utterly epic. It can be used with a shield and thrown in desperate situations, and its only real downside is its length. The arming sword will receive 5 out of 5 in terms of general utility. In terms of dueling effectiveness, the arming sword is also epic. If you master it, you can quickly dispatch all of your foes. Depending on how you build the class, you can easily take on any weapon in the game, with the exception being very experienced polearm users. In dueling effectiveness, the arming sword will receive 5 out of 5. The team play aspect of the arming sword is where this weapon is lacking. The weapon's short range is its greatest hindrance in front lines, and when up against multiple enemies in quick succession, you may be doomed if one is a polearm user. Because of the arming sword's lack of range, it will receive a 4 out of 5 in terms of team play. With regards to visual appeal, this thing is epic. All the options for the weapons are awesome, but the Viking skin goes the extra mile. I love being able to deck out all my gear in Mordhau, and the sword gives you a little bit extra, so it will receive 5 out of 5 in terms of visual appeal. The arming sword is indeed an epic beast, and that is why I've given it 19 out of 20 points. In terms of an all-around fantastic weapon in the game, the arming sword is it. Its greatest bane, however, is its short length. Well, that's it for this episode, everyone. Thank you all so much for watching. Go ahead and let me know what weapon you'd like to see in the next Weapons of Mordhau video in the comments below, and I'll catch you all in the next episode.